I'm a DJ. Why do you speak like you sound like a DJ? I'm like, nah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me putting on a persona whenever I'm doing all of these things. In fact, when I do presentations, I sometimes make fun of how I do my presentation and speak differently. Anyway, welcome to another episode of the Practical SQL Server HA show. My name is Edwin Sarmiento, and if you are joining in for the very first time, I cover in these episodes. I cover practical, and I want to say practical because for one, deploying a high availability solution is not cheap. It is expensive. I mean, the fact that you're paying $7,000 per core for a SQL Server Enterprise Edition license, and that's just a software. We're not even talking about building the server, scaling it out to different data centers for disaster recovery, or even for high availability. It is very expensive. And the last thing I want is for you to spend more on something that you don't really need. I want to make it practical. I want to make it actionable even. Because what good is information if you're not going to take action on it? I'm huge on action items. In fact, even with my clients, we don't just go and share information. No, take action, because that's what really matters. Side note, though, the other day, one of my mentees asked me, so what do you do for fun? I kind of limit, I don't want to say limit, but restrict stuff that I do for fun. I'm into music. That's one. And from where I come from, you are always told, there's no money in music. And so I spend a lot of time way back when, even now, playing music. I've got keyboard, a digital electronic keyboard plugged into my MacBook Pro, because now everything's software, right? And interestingly, during conversation, he asked me, so what's new and what's fancy? Like, I don't really like spending that much on gear that I can make the most out of. In fact, I have an acoustic guitar. I think it's about 5 years old. And the one thing that I was really excited about the other day, let me just share my screen, because I didn't know this thing existed. Share screen. I want to share this really quick because I find it really, really exciting. This one. So I got myself a new pair of acoustic guitar strings, interestingly, because as I was going through Amazon, I saw this cryogenic activated strings. The idea behind this is they're putting it into a cryogenic process to make them sound cool. Not really, but I just want to try it because they're cheap. I want to try it. Lo and behold, next thing, like, wow, my guitar sounds really, really exciting, and better. Um, and that has nothing to do with the person playing the guitar, because it sounded bad prior to me changing the strings. But the thing is, I never realized that somebody would act, or something like this is available for acoustic guitars, because the first thing that came to mind was, so they're making guitar strings specifically for people in Canada because it's cold. Right? I was actually making fun of people in the household because I told them, look, touch it, it's cool. I picked it up from the outside, and we're now having around 5 Celsius. We had below freezing weather the other day. So yeah, it's just cool. That literally cool when I first saw this thing, and it really sounded nice. Anyway, that's about it. Yeah, I've been spending more time on my acoustic guitar, and not on my digital keyboard, because again, like I said, now everything's software. So I don't know. I'm just lazy turning on the power, turning on my MacBook, plugging it in, running the. It's just a lot of work. With the acoustic guitar, pick it up and it just plays. This week's topic. Side note there. This week's topic is how being a jack of all trades is putting your high availability solution at risk. And this is not just from my own personal experience working as literally a jack of all trades, but I'm also seeing this in my customers' environment, especially in my consulting practice. And initially, I thought this was just me. Growing up, being born and raised in a third world country where you gotta be a generalist, you gotta do everything, right? For us, it was all about try to learn as many things as you can, and then do as much as you can. Uh, Fix plumbing, do the electrical stuff, fix your car, do anything and everything that you could possibly learn. And it really all depends on how curious you are, what catches your attention. And I started analyzing, I don't know, maybe it's just me over analyzing. I saw it in just about every aspect of my life. In music, I started learning how to play the guitar, the piano. I started with piano, and then the guitar, the bass, uh, played around with the saxophone at one point, and then the drums was the last thing that I learned. But the thing is, if there is one thing that I've learned being in music that I now take into my professional career and my consulting practice even, is what my former, he was my really good friend back in high school and college, and he said, to become a really, really, really good musician, you got to stick to one. And here is a session um, piano player. He's been playing for a lot of really good singers and session artists, and he started off as a drummer, but now he focused on piano and arranging and stuff like that. The reason I'm saying this is because, again, it is very easy for us to fall into the trap of becoming a jack of all trades, especially when you're just starting out in your career. You got into tech because you like the tech, but you don't know exactly what you want to do. And so you gotta have to explore everything. I want to be a developer. I want to be a Windows admin. I want to learn Linux. There's just so many until you ended up doing SQL Server. But then you kind of still want to do a lot of stuff. You picked a lane. You wanted to specialize, and you ended up doing SQL Server. But at the back of your mind, you're still thinking, hey, I still want to do this because it's fun, it's exciting. I still want to do that. Why am I sharing this? A lot of you know that I'm a SQL Server high availability and disaster recovery expert, but I don't talk about the times when I had to do System Center Operations Manager, System Center Configuration Manager, SharePoint, which I'm not really proud of. I was a developer, a network guy, and I was doing everything to a point where I can't really do something really, really well. Why? Because you're just all over the place. And like I said, I thought it was just a culture thing. It was how I was raised. Turns out a lot of Asians like me are generalists. And in Canada, that's what I'm also seeing, where a lot of people are generalists. In contrast, people in the United States, they were trained to be more of a specialist, but now I don't know, maybe it's the economy where people are starting to become even more generalist. But when it comes to high availability solutions, becoming a generalist or a jack of all trades, it's a common term. Being a jack of all trades will actually put your high availability solutions at risk, right? The reason for this is, again, take notes. I'm going to throw it out there. Make sure that you add your, again, old school pen and paper. Yes, I prefer pen and paper. Why being a jack of all trades is putting your high availability solutions at risk. Let's set the stage first. A high availability solution is something that needs care and feeding, right? Of course, you got to set it up first, make it stable, reliable, but it still needs care and feeding, right? And because it's highly available, it's mission critical, meaning you cannot spend hours trying to find out an issue and solve a problem with a high availability solution when it would cost the business money. What do I mean by that? A high availability solution typically is necessary if let's say you're making or you cannot afford an hour's worth of downtime. Right? That's especially in the financial industry. Majority of my clients are either in the healthcare or the financial industry. You cannot afford an hour-long outage because an hour-long outage is costing the business a lot of revenue. Okay, so if you are running a high availability solution, it really is mandatory, and I say mandatory, it is required to have somebody on board or somebody that you can call that would take care of stuff like it's an outage, it needs to be spin up or brought up online as quickly as you possibly can, right? So that's setting the stage. If you are a jack of all trades, and if you're doing a lot, it also means you're doing a lot. Let me repeat that just so it sinks in. If you're a jack of all trades and you're doing a lot, it also means you are doing a lot, meaning you're not just working on SQL Server. You're probably taking care of the printer. I don't know why you need to take care of the printer. You're probably also taking care of the Windows servers. You're also taking care of your Active Directory. You're also taking care of your mail servers. You're also taking care of the network. All of the, oh, by the way, the photocopier is broken. Got to take care of that, right? If you're a jack of all trades, your tendency is to do a lot, which means you are doing a lot. And from my experience, and from most people's experiences, a tired engineer, a tired sysadmin, a tired, stressed out, overworked DBA makes more mistakes. I couldn't count the number of times when I was working as a DBA for a managed services provider. I couldn't count the number of times that we've had quote unquote incidents that we, the DBAs, who's supposed to be taking care of databases for other customers and other clients, we were the ones who caused the incident. Somebody couldn't sleep well because they were overworked the other night. It was 3 o'clock in the morning and they haven't slept, yet there was an emergency. They had to jump in on their laptop, fire up the VPN, connected it, and all of a sudden, boom, things got worse. We will make more mistakes because we're tired, we're overworked, we're stressed out, we're burnt out. Oh, I've got my own personal experiences. There was one time when I had to troubleshoot a failover clustering issue. And because I was a subject matter expert within the team, my immediate supervisor gave me the ticket, say, take care of this. And the night before that, and this was the weekend, by the way, the night before that, I was working on several projects, not SQL Server. Yes, SharePoint, System Center. But I was the subject matter expert for failover clustering. They gave it to me. And man, 4 hours later, I still couldn't figure it out. I mean, this is supposed to be something I'm really, really, really good at. But I couldn't figure it out. And I told my boss, okay, we don't have an SLA for this. I'll keep working on it. The system is not yet causing any issues. We just need to fix this one because it may lead to an outage. I told my boss, take the ticket. I'll just take a nap. It's not really a nap because for me, it's an hour and a half or two. Woke up, took the ticket back, worked on it, and in less than 45 minutes, I was able to resolve something that I couldn't fix for 4 hours. And it's just our nature, right? When you're so tired, and you know how it is where people would say, oh, you just gotta push more, take it the extra mile. And there is nothing wrong with that if you're not dealing with a high availability solution, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's, you know, when the developers would write that extra line of code and spend another hour doing overtime, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, that's what you want to do. I don't want to do that anymore. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with that unless you're dealing with a high availability environment. Because in a high availability environment, number one, time is of the essence. If you didn't have enough rest, you are not relaxed, and you're panicking even, when an outage happens, it will take longer for you to fix something. And I have been in so many incidents in the past, a troubleshooting exercise where people would bring me in and they've been working on it for 6 hours. I come in, I solve the issue in 20 minutes, and they wonder, why couldn't we find that? Well, for one, your guys are all tired. And it's not that you cannot, it's just that your brain is not functioning well because you're just so tired, you're exhausted, and you just need to take a break. That's it. An overworked engineer, an overworked DBA is stressed out, you will make more mistakes. That's a guarantee. Okay? Even studies show that working more than 10 hours a day would get you to make more mistakes. Your brain starts to slowly shut down. Like something's right in front of you and it's not clicking, even if it is something that you've already done multiple times in the past. And again, it's us, humans. Okay, it's one of the reasons why I like focusing on the human aspect and the people aspect of high availability in disaster recovery, because for one, it is a team sport. I always emphasize that high availability and disaster recovery even is a team sport. You want your system to be highly available, but I don't expect you to be highly available. It's the joke that I tell my customers. I may be a high availability expert. I don't want to be highly available. I want my sleep. I want time to play my nice cryogenic strings from my acoustic guitar. I want that because if I'm relaxed, if I'm well rested, I am able to solve problems a lot faster and not cause even more problems, right? So that's the first one. You will be overworked as a jack of all trades because you're doing a lot. And an overworked engineer, an overworked DBA, an overworked sysadmin will make more mistakes and will put your high availability solution at risk. That's the first one, right? The second one is that when you are deploying a high availability solution without the proper guidance from subject matter experts, you're actually prone to misconfiguration. You are prone to misconfiguration. And what do I mean by that? As a jack of all trades, you are well versed or well informed. There's a big difference between well informed versus a subject matter expert. If you are a jack of all trades who are well informed of all of these different things, but it is only at the surface level, you kind of understand how it works. Sure, you can explain it, but can you actually do the work? That's totally different, right? Information is totally different from skills. As a jack of all trades, you kind of have an idea, kind of, right? But how sure are you that the way you configured your failover cluster is exactly what SQL Server needs in order for availability groups to work? I've seen this hundreds of times in the customer environments that I've been on. They would bring me in, do an evaluation of their environment, specifically either failover clustered instances or availability groups. They would ask me, how come we're having this issue, right? How come we're having, well, the sysadmin, he was the one who built the cluster, and then they handed it off to us, the DBAs, okay? And the thing is, the Windows admin built the failover cluster the way they've done it before. Meaning, if they want to build a failover cluster for a storage spaces direct or storage spaces, that's how they did it. If they built the failover cluster for Hyper-V clusters, that's how they did it. But it's not exactly what SQL Server needed. And they keep blaming, oh, the Windows admin, he might be really, really good at. But the thing is, because they've been doing it for all of their Windows servers that way, that's exactly how they built their failover clusters for the SQL Server availability groups. And it's prone to misconfiguration. And sometimes there will be like finger pointing, oh, it's the sysadmins who did this, and they're so stupid. And I say, let's stop the name calling here. The person only did what he or she thought was right when he was building it. It just so happened that he did not have the right information, or he may not be aware that there is such a thing as a proper configuration. And I cannot blame him for that. I cannot blame a 5-year-old for not being able to pay his taxes. He's just not aware, right? And in the same way, if you are a generalist or a jack of all trades, okay, you will attempt, and I say attempt because you would feel that this is something that you got to do. You would make that attempt to try and configure something. Okay, let's build a failover cluster. Well, how difficult can it be? I'll click, 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 and done. The wizard will do everything. How difficult can it be? It's going to do everything for me, right? As a generalist, as a jack of all trade, you would attempt to do something because you've done something similar in the past. And it's just normal for us, right? Again, that's fine, except this is a high availability solution. So the way you configured Windows, if you're a Windows admin, or the way you configured SQL Server, if you're a DBA, In all of those cases or instances where it's just a standalone instance, it's fine. But this is a high availability solution. A misconfiguration can cause outages. Couldn't count the number of times when people would say, hey, let's just tweak the heartbeat settings. Same subnet delay, same subnet threshold, cross subnet delay, cross subnet threshold. Let's just tweak that for a second. And maybe this outage will go away. Maybe. Right? Oh, because this is something that somebody else did on the internet, on a blog post, or on a webinar, or on an article. Let's do this, right? There is a tendency for misconfiguration because, as a jack of all trades, you're not aware, right? You're not aware of the fine details of how something needs to be properly configured in order for this to work. Right? Even the stuff like, what port number am I supposed to be allowing for my Windows firewall or for my network firewall, right? These are the things that you have to consider, right? Because again, it's prone to misconfiguration, okay? It's great if you did the configuration right the first time, and this is where I hear a lot of my customers and ask them, so how is it going? Like, well, we don't even feel that we have an high availability solution. Why? It was said, it was done properly, it was set up correctly, it was designed appropriately. It's a set and forget thing. The only time that we need to touch it is when we had to patch it. That's it. Yeah, everything is smooth sailing to a point where they sometimes forget that they have an availability group sitting around somewhere because it's not complaining, right? But again, as a jack of all trades, you would miss configuration because you haven't had the time and the experience to dive deep into the right configuration settings that high availability solutions like failover clustered instances or available group solutions would require. So that's the second one. Okay. The third one is this, and this is something that I struggled with in the early days of my career. As a jack of all trades, as a generalist, your questions will be limited by what you're seeing. I'll say that again. As a jack of all trades or as a generalist, your questions and the questions that you ask will be limited by your experience and directly influenced by what you're seeing. You see an error message on the Windows event log that pertains to a failover cluster event. You'll take that, ask, how is this going? What is causing this? And you know what most people do is they would go into a public forum like Stack Exchange or Server Fault or the Microsoft Answers, and they would pose the exact same question. They would provide all the details, but that's it, right? And then they would get responses from people all over the internet answering the question and making assumptions based on the very limited amount of information that was provided. And the challenge there is, okay, because I don't know anything else, right? I don't know. Windows event log is telling me this. Failover cluster is telling me this. What else could it be? I don't know. I'll just ask somebody else. Their response is now something that you would take because, oh, it makes sense, the response. Or, let me try this. Again, that's fine, but not in a high availability solution. And what I've seen, and this is, again, I wish I have a checklist of everything that my clients and my customers would come to me for. And I couldn't count the number of times when they would say, oh, we made this configuration setting because we were having this issue. And I ask, what made you decide to do that? Oh, some guy that we've read off of the internet, or his setup is similar to ours. We just did exactly what he told or he mentioned in a blog post or an article. And the thing is, your questions will be based off of your limited understanding and what is right in front of you. And so the answers that you are going to get will be based on the questions you asked. You ask a yes or no question, you get a yes or no answer. Like, again, I'll just use the same example with the Windows Server failover clustering event. You see an error, a message in the Windows event log. You don't know what it is. You haven't seen it before. And so you post a question. People are answering. and therefore you'll take their answers as it is. Why? Because, well, you don't have the depth of understanding of what is really going on with this. Uh, Not just Windows Server configuration, SQL Server configuration even, right? Oh, we will do async commit for my secondary replica. Unfortunately, we cannot do automatic failover. Really? That's by design. If you set your secondary replica in async commit replication mode, you will not be able to do automatic failover. And so I hate to be the bearer of the bad news sometimes when I tell customers it is by design, because it really is by design. And don't blame me, I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. And the thing about that is, again, based on their limited understanding, the questions that they would ask would be surface level and not really getting the bigger picture. And maybe your network admins may have made modifications to the bandwidth, the network adapter, the failover cluster, and they may have their own reasons. There's a reason why you're getting that failover cluster event, because the network and the Windows admin did what they needed to do, given the requirements that they had. Maybe it's what you actually need, and you're thinking it's wrong. Why? Again, because of your limited understanding and lack of depth of an understanding of what is going on. And this is very, very important, because again, a high availability solution requires multiple people, not just one. So your storage admins might be doing something that they need, it's exactly what they need, but then it's affecting SQL Server. Unless you start to have that conversation with them and you start to ask them, hey, why are you doing this? And have a bigger understanding of what is really needed, right? Again, high availability solutions are a team sport. They're a team sport. It's not an individual thing where, yeah, I can make do with this, because at the end of the day, you're gonna go on vacation. You are going to get some sleep, grab something to eat, and you are going to need someone's help with this, right? It's not enough for one person to just take care of everything from start to finish, right? Even though I can, right? Because of my again, sometimes I'm really thankful for the idea and the fact that I had to go through the generalist stage in order for me to get to where I am today. That I understand Active Directory, DNS, networking, storage, failover clustering, and SQL Server all at the same time. But I don't do it. Even though I can, I don't, because I don't want to be the bottleneck, right? I don't want to be the only person who knows all of these just because I'm a jack of all trades. I don't want to be the only person responsible for this. Can be one person. In fact, when somebody would ask for my help about availability groups or failover clustered instances, and I ask a bunch of questions, the first thing that I ask after that is, how many people are there on the team? And if they say one, man, forget about this for a while. Get somebody on board to do this with you, okay? Because it will put your high availability solution at risk. It will put you at risk. You, the person responsible for this, okay? And like I said, we sometimes sidestep the people in the process aspect, but these are more important than the technology itself. There were a couple of, I've worked on a couple of projects in 2020 and 2021 where customers and the clients brought me in, not because they could not do the job. They have the talent, they have the skills, they can do the job. Unfortunately, they just couldn't do the job. Most of them are overworked, because a lot of them have been overwhelmed with the amount of workload that they need to take care of during the pandemic. And now they don't have the bandwidth to do this. They're just so tired working 14-hour days. It just isn't scalable, right? When you're dealing with high availability solutions, it has got to be more than just yourself, right? Whether you can do everything on your own or not, it's not enough for just one person to take care of this, right? That is about it for this week's episode of the Practical SQL Server HAARRDDD show. Again, if you need help with doing a quick assessment of your environment, because, well, how do you know what to fix if you don't know exactly what your environment is at? I always use the analogy of driving a car. How would you know that you're actually driving a car that could take you to work, that's not going to break in between your home and at work, where you're right in the middle of an interstate? How can you make sure that it's not gonna cause you to be late to work tomorrow if you haven't had it checked before, right? Uh, it's interesting because we were just talking about monitoring solutions with a few of my clients the other day, and he was telling me stories about uh, how they ran out of gas. And I said, "Oh, isn't it funny? We were just talking about monitoring the other day, and now you're telling me you ran out of gas." Shouldn't we data professionals be relying on data and looking at data on a regular basis? And the same thing with high availability solutions. If you don't know exactly what state your high availability solution is in, you got to get somebody in, have a quick overview or a quick, not but really deep analysis and a review of the entire environment, so that from there on you can decide, hey, let's get this thing stabilized. Bring a subject matter expert in so that they can start looking at the state your environment is in, the changes that you need to make to eventually stabilize it to a point where, okay, it's smooth sailing, that you don't have to touch it ever. Well, in the future, when you have to install patches and possibly restore from backups, you will, right? But how good would it be when your environment is just smooth sailing and not have to worry about anything because it's been stabilized, it's been well taken care of by somebody who has done this a lot of times and has seen all the possible issues that you could ever encounter. If you need any help with anything SQL Server, high availability, and disaster recovery, I'd like to help. Use that link on the screen to schedule a strategy session. And what I do in these strategy sessions is get clear on three things. Number one, we'll look at the environment, do a quick assessment, talk about what is not working. Number two, look at what is the ultimate goal, right? Not just, yeah, let's stabilize the environment, but why do you want this environment stable? Really look at the ultimate goal of why you want this environment stable and highly available. And number three, come up with a step-by-step action plan in order to get those items resolved. There's no point in coming up with a plan of action if you're not going to take action on it, right? So use that link on the screen, schedule a strategy session. Let's have that talk. And I look forward to speaking to you on how to make your always on available groups or your failover clustered instances or even your high availability solutions stable, reliable, and truly highly available. I don't want you to be highly available. You got to have a backup, right? And that is about it for this week's episode. Tune in again for next week's episode of the Practical SQL Server HAARRDDD show. It's the weekend. I have more time. Maybe I should spend more time. My keyboard misses me. Maybe I should spend more time with them. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will see you again next week.